friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sasha. Today we are going to find out what my favorite book of 2024 was. I did a lot of work making this into a little bracket type game yesterday, and I'm hoping it works out. I had a lot of graphics I had to make, so I'm hoping they're very pretty on the screen. I'm probably going to be different sizes as we go through this video through editing. So bear with me for that, but we're starting with 24 of my favorite books of 2024. I didn't realize those numbers matched up until just right now, because that's simply how many books that I loved this year. And I do have multiple books from the same series, and I did pit them against each other, which is rough of me. I also tried to just match things, like dark romances I put against each other. Historical fiction I tried to put against each other. Contemporary fiction I tried to put against each other. There's like one time where that didn't quite work out, and we'll just talk about it when we get there. So I guess sit back, relax. Let's find out what my favorite book of 2024 is. I read a lot of Omegaverse this year. I read a lot of just like dark romance and some contemporary historical things, and I just have no idea which way this is going to go, and I think it could be completely different if I just kept rearranging the books over and over and over. So I don't necessarily think this is like the definitive my favorite book of the year, but it definitely is going to be my favorite book of the year for this video. So that's how we're going to do it. Also, please bear with me today. I'm not feeling the best, so I might be a little more wiggly or take more breaks, have more cuts. I don't know how this video is gonna go. Just know that that is a thing, and when I don't feel well, my words don't come out super well either, so I'm gonna just try and hold it together because I gotta film this video because I planned it to come out on a certain date. It's December 30th. Yeah, it's December 30th as I'm filming this, and I tried to hold off as long as I could, and I'm currently reading a book that I don't think I'm gonna finish before the new year. So I figured this is fine, and even if I did finish it and it's a favorite, it'll go into 2025. So, like I said, we're starting with 25 books. Here is what we're working with so far. This is the big bracket. I do blow things up to bigger sizes so you can see them a little more easily. Oh my gosh, we're gonna start upper left-hand corner when I'm looking at this, and hopefully that will make sense when you're seeing it on screen as well. So the first 4 books we're working with, 2 are historical fiction and 2 are Omegaverse, and they are paired up against each other. So first up, we have The Lost Queen and The Lost Kingdom by Shine Pike. The 3rd book did come out this month on December 3rd. My library doesn't have it yet, and that's how I've been able to read them in the past. I also happened to get an ARC of the first 2 books, and then never thought to even request the 3rd one, because I haven't really been requesting as many ARCs from NetGalley recently. My NetGalley stats are bad, so even if and when I did request something, I don't think I'd get approved. So I can tell you about the first book. I won't tell you too much about the second book because it's obviously going to be a little bit of a spoiler. So this is following King Arthur's court, but it's more or less following Lancelot's sister. So, or not Lancelot's sister, Merlin's sister. So this whole story follows her entire life in the first book up until she's in her 30s and having her kids. So we see her as a child, we see her as a teenager, we see her as a married, early 20s, probably maybe still teenager, I don't remember, into having her children. She does have a forbidden romance that is woven into this story in absolutely heartbreaking ways. Both of these books made me openly weep, and I'm trying to think. The second book, I guess I can tell you, goes from just one perspective into 3. It follows her, her brother, and her daughter, which was really exciting to have that additional group of characters to work with. gosh. I think I might have to give it to book 2, only because I liked the multiple character perspectives. So the Forgotten Kingdom moves forward. Okay, up next, we are moving into Eliana Lee, The Scent of Us, The Scent of Us Part 1 and The Scent of Us Part 2. I'm gonna be honest, I read both of these books in one day. So it's hard for me to remember which thing happened in which book to know which one I liked better. I think, again, I might have to go with the second book. So let me tell you a little bit about it. This is an Omegaverse Why Choose romance. I believe she ends up with 6 men by the time we get to the end of this. And she is an Omega who is escaping her current pack, who are very abusive. There's 3 chapters of her still in that relationship, and it doesn't really shy away from some of the things that they do to her. So trigger warnings for that. But then she is able to escape from them and go into this sort of like safety program and go back to school. And it's as she's going through school and everything that she starts assembling her own pack and experiencing for the first time what it means to really be taken care of and protected. I think, again, I have to go with book number 2, because book number 2 is when we finally get all 6 interacting as one group consistently, whereas book number 1, it focuses a little more on the core of the pack and not everyone. So I'm gonna go with part 2, which is kind of a wild choice. 2 second books in a series. That is crazy. Okay, up next, we have more Omegaverse and moving into some dark romance. We have a pack for autumn and a pack for winter. A pack for autumn is by Amelia Emerson. A pack for winter is by Eliana Lee, who wrote The Scent of Us. Then we have His to Sorrow, which is also Amelia Emerson / Rossi. She has 2 different pen names. And then we go into Neon Gods by Katie Robert. Okay, let's do the Omegaverse. So, the pack for autumn has a lot of fall activities. It has a disabled main character, it has body positivity, and it has mental health representation. A pack for winter has a teacher main character, it has body positivity within the men and the Omega of her pack, and it has POC representation. I think I did enjoy a pack for autumn a little bit more because the disability representation are things that I personally have. And even though I was working in an elementary school just like the other Omega, I still felt the stress that she was going through, even though it's been a few years since I've been in a school myself. But I think a pack for autumn is going to take it, and also Halloween is my favorite, so that just makes sense to me. Okay, His to Sorrow is a mafia romance. Again, a disabled main female character. This time she has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. She uses a wheelchair, she uses a walker, she has mobility aids, and she gets married to a mafia don who she is very frightened of at first, even though her father is also one, but her father was abusive, so she expects that same treatment. And it's a very sweet and spicy love story. The writing I thought was different than her Omegaverse books, and I prefer the writing in her Omegaverse books, though I'm very curious to continue with her mafia romances in His Juliet, which is the second book, to see if it changes. Because I'm wondering if she wrote the mafia romance first, and then went into Omegaverse and published those first. So I'm curious about the timelines, because to me it feels like it's written like her first book. Then we have Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This was a reread for me this year. I love this book so much. This was one of my first introductions to sort of BDSM culture, to like Hades and Persephone retellings. It really sort of sparked this resurgence in my own reading, and just like, I don't know, it was such a big moment, and this was me rereading this book to try and get that same feeling again. I love the representation in His to Sorrel because it's good hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos representation. But the feelings I get from Neon Gods, okay, a little spoiler, they both have dogs, because that was the one hang up. I was like, but this one has a dog, but then I was like, but this one does too. It's going to Neon Gods. Oh my gosh. That is a little unexpected. That's so exciting. Okay. Alright, up next we have dark romance and historical romance. One of them is a fantasy historical romance. We'll get to it. So we have Lights Out by Nevessa Allen versus Servitude to Serpents by Callie Moss. These are without a doubt probably my favorite dark romances of 2024, and either could easily be my top book of 2024. So I don't know how I'm supposed to pick between them. Here's the major difference in vibes. Servitude to Serpents is all trauma. Trauma. They're all villains. There is no good character. Even our female main character, through the circumstances of what happens to her, becomes like a villain, becomes a bad character. But I'm obsessed with both of them. I'm obsessed with that book. Oh my god. The other side of that is Josh and Allie. And I ate up Masked Talk when that became a thing. I was on it before it integrated into Book Talk. I was on it before it integrated with Bike Talk. Like, I saw the birth of Masked Talk. That sounds really weird. Okay, I had to get up for a second. Let me get back into my little pretzel here. Okay, so like I was saying, I saw the birth of Masked Talk on TikTok when that was happening, and what a time for this book to come out at the tail end. It's still kind of a thing, but at the tail end of that phenomenon. And it's so funny. I read the audiobook and I had such a good time with those characters, and I could just listen to them for days. He was so self-aware when he like broke into her house and then was like, oh no, I fucked up, I should not have done that. It's like, no kidding, bro. No kidding. But God, it was him filming his next couple TikToks in her bed. Oh, and the cat daddy. The pet in Servitude to Serpents is her. And like, cats are better than people, so I based on that alone, I gotta give it to Lights Out. Ah, I can't believe it. Okay, I've made my decision. We're not backing out now. Okay, up next is A Rivalry of Hearts and Bringing Down the Duke. A Rivalry of Hearts is the fantasy historical romance. This takes place in a fantasy world where there is a human realm and sort of like a fae island is how I remember it being described. There's a fae male writer who writes like romance, poetry, love stories, and then there's a human writer who also writes really steamy romances. They've been adapted into plays in Fairyland. The fairies, the queens, are obsessed with her writing, and so she goes on a book tour with this fae author as well, and he makes some snarky comments about her books and her writing, and they're in a competition to get a publishing contract at the end of the tour. And it's spicy, it's silly. The world building, the imagery was so wonderful. I had such a good time with that book. Then we have Bringing Down the Duke, which is just straight up historical romance. This had a lot of conversations about women's rights, like way back in the day. I don't remember what time period this was, and how they had to use men to get their causes heard by Parliament and like rights to vote and rights to own land and rights to open a bank account and like all of these things. And I just absolutely loved how they were sent to sort of infiltrate this really important man's party. Not like political party, but also the house party he was having. And she gets so pissed off at him at one point. This is the point where I was like, this is going to be my favorite book. She gets so pissed off, she leaves the house, walks out in the snow for like 7 miles to try and get to the next house or town or whatever. And he has to come on his horse to go save her because he's a chivalrous man. And he's like, I can't have this woman catch cold and die in this snow. And then they argue a little bit, and she eventually gets back on the horse with him. And it was just like, one horse! Ah! It had so many good tropes in it. It was such a silly, happy romance. And I had such a good time with it. I think I'm going Bringing Down the Duke. Oh my gosh. Okay. Alright, up next. The two at the top are the ones where I was like, these are my last 2 books on my list. I don't know where to put them. So it's Full Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon, which is a monster romance, and then it's All I Want Is You by Fallon Ballard, which is a holiday romance. 2 very different things, but the one reason I was like, well, they kind of work is that in Full Moon Rising, our female main character is trying to become like a scholar. She reads a lot, she researches a lot, she knows a ton of different languages. She's incredibly smart. In our other book, The Holiday Romance, these are both romance writers who get stuck snowed in a hotel together at like what was an end of the year publishing party, essentially. So I was like, well, the scholarly aspect is kind of there. The books are there. Full Moon Rising is such a great example of all books are political, including monster smut, and I went into this hard in my review, listing every single way that this was a commentary on something. There's addiction commentary on this. There's racism commentary in this. There's female versus male and misogyny and the patriarchy commentary on this. There's so much good shit in it, okay? All I Want Is You is maybe my favorite Christmas romance I've ever read. And it's so short. It was 240 something pages. I cried 3 times. I was sobbing so hard I had to put the book down. And it was that perfect mix of like hurt and tortured during the holidays and then getting everything you wanted back. And it's that feeling that's the reason this worked for me, because I get so depressed every Christmas season. And I can't do just like the happy, goofy, silly, hee hee ha ha Christmas books because they make me sick. So the fact that this was like, they're both really upset over mistakes they made in the past and they're working through that in a very painful way. Oh my god, it's the best Christmas holiday book I've ever read. But can I have a Christmas book be my favorite book of the year? Can it be? So the Christmas book is like personally touching, but Full Moon Rising I think is such like, as a writer, I think back to that book a lot to be like, look at all the things you can put in your book, subtly or not, and make that work and have all this different commentary on all these different things. I think for that point alone, from like the craft perspective, I'm giving it to Full Moon Rising. Up next, we have A Dowry of Blood versus Heartless Heathens. These are both very twisted, very fucked up romances, very dark romances. A Dowry of Blood is a vampire retelling of Dracula's Bride, and Heartless Heathens is sort of, I think it's a Notre Dame retelling, potentially? Hunchback, but she is the one captive in the tower, and then these 3, I don't remember, they're not like in a mafia, but they're part of some sort of gang. They find her and decide that they own her at that point. And very crazy book, so many discussions on religious trauma, so many discussions on capitalism and consumerism, so many discussions on the politics of our world and right wing versus left wing. Very interesting. And then A Dowry of Blood is a lot of discussion on domestic violence and psychological abuse and manipulation and just wild, wild stuff. So now I have to pick which one. I've kind of always been a vampire girl for a long time. So I kind of, the edge up is the vampire aspect of this. And overall, the writing was a little bit better for me. Some of the pacing was a little bit off in Heartless Heathens at one point. So I'm giving it to A Dowry of Blood. Oh man. Oh man. This is crazy. Alright, up next, we're moving into some contemporary romances. We have The Bookish Life of Nina Hill versus Real by Kennedy Ryan. The Bookish Life of Nina Hill is another, like, personal 5-star for me. This character was like, if you took my brain and put it into a book and explained the way that I think about things, that was this book for me. It was like seeing myself for the first time explained in a way that I don't articulate well. And it was fascinating. Like, she had all of her calendars and schedules, and she was like very rigid in her thinking, and along comes this guy, and she fucks this relationship up so many times, and he still was like, okay, if we're gonna do this, we need to compromise on some things. And she tried, and she did. And that was like a moment where I was like, oh, maybe there's hope for me, was the kind of feeling I had. Real by Kennedy Ryan is about a Broadway actor who gets scooped up out of Broadway and brought to Hollywood to become a star. And I've always been fascinated with actors and actresses, so that really, really appealed to me as a reader. And then it turns out she has a chronic illness, and that sort of progresses throughout the story as well. And this was incredible disability rep, especially through the relationship that blossoms in this story. I think this would be harder for me if I had read The Bookish Life recently. I read that back in like a long time ago. I don't even remember when. But Real I just read in either December or November. And I think I have to give it to Real. Because there's, again, so much commentary on additional things besides just the story it's telling. And Kennedy Ryan wrote an entire script and put it in the book. So not only is she writing this plot line between these two characters, she's also writing an entire movie and putting the script in the book. That's wild. So it's going to the Real. Up next, we have two Omegaverse books battling once again. It's Eliana Lee and Amelia Emerson. Can you tell? I fell down a hole with them this year, and I'm so happy to be there. So The Heat of Us by Eliana Lee is book 3 in her Omegaverse trilogy. However, the book 1 and 2 are part 1 and 2, and then book 3 is sort of a standalone. It's a new Omega, new pack, but you also see the original pack every once in a while. I love this story because the Omega is a sex worker, very sex positive, very like into the nitty-gritty details of sex work, of how that all sort of works behind the scenes, which was fascinating to read about. And I really loved the making of this pack. The alphas, and I think there might be a beta in this, really come together beautifully, and there is some abuse and trauma happening with one of them as well. And it was great to see the found family. That like really pulled this book together for me. Cherished by Amelia Emerson could easily be my favorite book of the year. So I kind of have to say that now because I'm pretty sure it's going to win. I'm pretty sure at the very least it's going to win out of these two. So Cherished is a story about an Omega. It's also book 3 in her Omegaverse series, which part 1 and 2 could have made this list but didn't. Because I was like, I just have I have to have 24. I couldn't do any more than that, so they could have been on here, but I cut them out. Cherished is about an Omega who is chronically ill, and she doesn't have the resources to find out what's wrong with her. She can't go to the doctor. She keeps passing out, throwing up, losing a lot of weight. She's barely surviving. She goes home to not having any power. It's freezing, the lights are off, no electricity, she can't shower. Like, she is having a really hard time. And through just like going about her daily life, continuing to go to work, continuing to do this, continuing to do that, she starts building her pack. And once her pack realizes that she's sick, they sort of scoop her out of her situation, get her the best care possible. And it's not a disability story where their love saves her and cures her and is magically just wonderful. It's the realities of being sick for the rest of your life. And oh my god, did I sob through most of this book, because this was another time where I was reading it where, similar to The Real, where it was a relationship of a couple staying together with one of the people being sick, this was a relationship where they were supporting her while she was sick. And it's like, that feels like such a fantasy. I'm literally getting choked up thinking about it. So I didn't even plan to put these two books together, but I'm kind of happy that they are together. So it's gonna be Cherished as the winning book out of those two Omegaverse books, but I have no idea how I'm gonna pick between Real and Cherished when we get there. That's gonna be so hard. Up next, we have all fantasy. Thank goodness. Let's get out of the emotions for a minute. Up first, we have To Cage a God versus Fate Inked in Blood. To Cage a God was a new to me author this year, and Fate Inked in Blood is Danielle L. Jensen, who you probably can't see because I've cut myself small, but I love her and have loved her since Dark Shores. To Cage a God is a dragon story with a lot of political uprising and also a disabled character. There's LGBTQ representation. There is a romance undertone in this that I did not see coming from a mile away, and it's one of my favorite romances that I've read this year. It lingers within me. When I think of how I want to write my own characters for my own book, I always think like of the feeling I had when I was reading about those two characters. Incredible. A Fate Inked in Blood is a Norse mythology fantasy story with gods and goddesses sort of handing their powers over to chosen humans. It's in their bloodlines. And obviously our main female character has one of those bloodlines, and so does our main male character. It was very much like a task story. They had to continue to do these things and get to this place, and then do this thing and get to this other place, but also there's a war starting, there's fighting happening, and there's the potential that the son is going to abandon his family for this girl, and the implications that has as well. So, the one out of these two I think I liked better was To Cage a God, because of that romance plotline and also because of the disability in it, the disability rep. Up next are two books in a series, Legendborn and Bloodmarked. I'm so excited for the third book. I gotta check when it comes out. I think it might be March. This is another King Arthur retelling. I had a little King Arthur moment earlier in the year, and this was so fascinating to read about because it is a African-American character who goes to a predominantly all-white secret society of these King Arthur and the Round Table people and tries to infiltrate it because she's trying to find out who murdered her mother. And there's so many discussions about racism, there's so many discussions about ancestral magic and the different types of magic, and that was extremely fun to get to hear about. So not only do we have like the King Arthur part of the story, but we're also getting a lot of other magic I hadn't heard about before. So that was a really fascinating first book. Once again, I'm finding a trend though. I did like the second book better. And I can't really tell you why, because it is too much of a spoiler. But we're just gonna say, I liked the second book better. So that's that on that. Let me scroll down, let me put them in their places. Alright, we're back to The Forgotten Kingdom versus The Scent of Us by Eliana Lee. Those are such different books. It's really hard. I'm trying to think which one would I reread and have the best time rereading. I think it would be The Scent of Us because The Forgotten Kingdom is so emotional and makes me so sad sometimes. I mean, The Scent of Us has some sad moments too, for sure, but it's not as heavy as The Forgotten Kingdom. So I'm going The Scent of Us. Ah! Oh my gosh. Okay, up next, A Pack for Autumn versus Neon Gods. This is kind of easy because Neon Gods was a reread. A Pack for Autumn was my first time reading it. You can't beat the first time you read a book. That first time you read it, you want to catch and chase that feeling. You want to experience that first time feeling over and over again. It was my first time reading it. So A Pack for Autumn is gonna win. That's 2 Omegaverse books. Oh no. Oh, well, this one's also pretty easy. Lights Out versus Bringing Down the Duke. It's gonna be Josh. Josh, my man. If you get my best book of the year, I'm gonna scream. Okay, we have Full Moon Rising versus A Dowry of Blood. Ooh, I just finished A Dowry of Blood like 2 days ago, and I finished Full Moon Rising probably a month ago. This is hard, because one of them is dark and one of them is light, but has so many themes in it. They both have a lot of, like, great topics to discuss. Oh my god, this is so hard. Because I'm thinking, like, I had a really good time with Full Moon Rising. But both of these books made me think about my writing again, which is something I'm also basing my vote on. Because A Dowry of Blood was written not like a normal book. It was written as if it was written to Dracula, but we are the people who end up reading it instead of Dracula because he's dead. And that is such a crazy cool concept. She's talking to him the entire book. And that is so good. Oh my gosh, but then... Dang, I have to pick one. Do I want it to be a happy book? Or do I want it to be the sad book? Because we got a little glimmer of hope at the end of A Dowry of Blood, but not enough. I fear I have to go Full Moon Rising. Oh my god. I'm as shocked as you. Okay, now it's The Real versus Cherished. Oh no. I think it's The Real. Okay, and here's the only reason why, because her writing a script fascinates me. I think it's so incredible. I think it's so genius. That's the only reason, because on every other level, these books are the same for me. In terms of the emotions I was feeling, in terms of how much I liked the relationships, in terms of how much I liked the plot and what was going on. The only reason The Real gets a leg up is because of the script. Oh my god, Cherished though, see, this is why I think if these were in a different order, we would have a different outcome. Because Cherished, without a doubt, is one of my top books of this year. Without a doubt. I just knocked it off the board! Oh my god. Speaking of God, Decay to God versus Bloodmarked. Oh no. I think I have to go with To Cage a God because of the disability rep. Because in both of those books, the romances are very strong and very fun and kind of like, what's gonna happen? You don't really know. And also the magic in both of them, they're very parallel on a lot of things, but the disability rep in To Cage a God wins out for me. Because I literally didn't even recognize that the character was disabled, because it was just like, it felt like I was reading about myself, and then I was like, wait a minute, if I'm reading about things that I relate to, that means this character is disabled, and she's literally like in a wheelchair, shoving needles into herself to take her medicine. Like, obviously, that's not an abled character, but I'm so used to being disabled now that I was just like, wow, this is really nice. And I didn't even register that it was nice because she was disabled. So, it's To Cage a God. Okay, I have to take a minute to fill in the rest of this sheet, and then we're gonna have my top 3 books, so I'll be right back. Okay, I think we have our top 6 books. The Scent of Us Part 2, A Pack for Autumn, Lights Out, Full Moon Rising, Real, and To Cage a God. So, between The Scent of Us Part 2 and A Pack for Autumn, I gotta give it to A Pack for Autumn as, one of my top 3 books of the year! That is crazy! Oh my gosh. Okay, up next on the other side, we have Full Moon Rising versus Real. Full Moon Rising versus Real. That's kind of also easy for me, which is wild. It's Real. Anything this year that had like great disability rep is a top contender, which then brings me to The Troublemaker. Okay, it's Lights Out versus To Cage a God. If I don't put To Cage a God, I don't have any fantasy on this list. My camera turned off. Thankfully, I hadn't made a decision by the time I realized it had turned off, but my camera was just like, this is boring. It's not, actually. I care, okay? So we're between Lights Out and To Cage a God for my 3rd top book of the year. So, okay, in my mind, To Cage a God is more complex. We have a lot more characters, we have a lot of different point of views that we're following, we have a lot going on. There's a lot of politics happening, there's a lot of magic happening, there's a lot of, like, misdirection, misleading. There's that romance. There's 2 romances, actually. One of them is sapphic. One of them is a disabled character. And then there's Lights Out, and that's just like the feel-good, smutty, masked boyfriend from TikTok vibes. It's To Cage a God. Okay, I made a very quick decision. I cannot believe my top 3 books. Oh my god. We have an Omegaverse, we have a contemporary romance, and we have To Cage a God, and all 3 books have disability rep. I'm so proud of myself! Okay, but now I have to pick my favorite book of 2024. And I feel like it can't be like a holiday-themed book, because A Pack for Autumn is kind of holiday-esque. It's like leading up to Halloween. Oh my gosh, I literally can't believe I have to pick one. That's the whole point of this video, you ding-dong. You ding-dong? That's the whole point. My stomach hurts. I don't know how to do this. keep thinking about Cherished, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like if Cherished was on this list, that might win. Wow, this is hard. I can't even make a pros and cons list because they're my top 3. They're all evenly matched. I think A Pack for Autumn is out just because it's a holiday book. Not any other reason, because it had great disability rep. It had PCOS and PMDD. And it talked about death and grief and therapy and mental health. And it had a really cute cat in it. The Real goes from Broadway to Hollywood. It has a lot of really cool behind the scenes movie making stuff. It has 2 really complex, wonderful characters with really emotional backstories. Family drama, again, grief and death. Has the disability rep. Has like a slow burn relationship that was so good. To Cage of God. Multiple characters, not just dealing with one relationship. It's a revenge story. It's a political uprising story. It's very female rage coded. Oh, I think it might be To Cage of God. As soon as I said female rage, I started remembering more of the plot and like how we start in the beginning and how our character, one of them just like drinks to get through life because shit is fucked up and they were abused by the mother figure in their life. But also they have all of these other memories of their real family's death and oh my gosh. It's To Cage of God. That's my favorite book of 2024, according to this bracket. Oh my gosh. Everyone clap. I can't believe we didn't end up with a dark romance on this list. Well, I mean, it was on the list, but it didn't make it. Like, A Servitude to Serpents or Lights Out could have easily been top 3, but as we saw, it didn't make it past some of the other things. I'm surprised Cherished didn't get any higher than it did, but I didn't realize it was going up against Real, which was genuinely like the perfect book to pit it against, but still. Even if Cherished had gone up against To Cage of God, I don't think it could have pulled out of there. Oh my gosh, well, these are my favorite books of 2024. I hope potentially I've convinced you to maybe try and read some of them if you didn't get to them last year. Oh, wow. I can't wait to see what I'm going to be reading in 2025. I'm part of 2 book clubs, which I'm sure will keep me very busy in the new year, as well as a few different challenges over on Storygraph that I'm going to try my best to accomplish, but I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do so. Because I'm sure there will be a few months where I'm literally only reading the 2 books for my book clubs and nothing else, because I want to try and start draft 3 of my own novel in 2025 and to continue working on that as well. So this video was chaos. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here with me. What was your favorite book of 2024? Let me know in the comments down below. I will see you guys in 2025, which is when this video comes out, so right now. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye!